Welcome into a WFUV featured report. I'm Dan Bartels alongside Tucker Austin, and today we're going to cover the PGA Championship, what went down this past weekend at Valhalla in Louisville, Kentucky. And Tucker, I just want to get your first thoughts about the tournament. It's one of the four major championships in the golf world, and Xander Schauffele took it home. We'll talk all about it, but gut reactions from you.
I mean, what a beautiful course. First off,
Right.
before we talk about anything, Valhalla is a beautiful golf club designed by Jack Nicklaus himself in Louisville, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. It's hosted the PGA Championship multiple times in the past. A couple past winners. Tiger Woods took the victory in 2000. McIlroy took the victory in 2014. That was actually his last major. So really awesome tournament, really great weekend, really beautiful course, and what a great win for Xander Schauffele.
Yeah, definitely. And we were on the green, WFUV's exclusive golf podcast, and we were talking about the Masters. And our very own Will Talent picked Xander Schauffele to win the Masters. He unfortunately did not, but he had a really good showing in the PGA. He was playing good golf throughout the whole weekend, and he finished under 21. So minus 21 for Xander Schauffele, bringing home his first major championship. And when I see that, my first thought goes to Phil Mickelson because he won the Masters in 2004, and he was in the golf circles for a long time, and he didn't really break through until he really won that 2004 Masters. And again, that was in his 13th year. So he had 22 wins before that moment in time, and I looked to Xander Schauffele, and he's had some wins before too, but this is a really big moment for him, your first major championship. And obviously, we saw what Phil Mickelson was able to do all the years after that. So, could you envision a world where Xander Schauffele really goes on to have a really legacy run?
I think it would be awesome, and I definitely can see it. This is Xander's first win now in 2 years, so a bit of a dry spell there, but he finally gets back in the win column, and it's massive because it's also, like you mentioned, it's his first major title, which is actually very interesting. His score of minus 21 for the entire tournament was the lowest score in a major championship ever. He also now holds the course record after his blistering second round or first round 62.
Crazy.
Um, that just pretty much gave him the breathing room he needed to play the rest of the tournament. 2 rounds later, Shane Lowry would tie that course record, which I thought was very funny, but still, it's very nice for Xander to get that course record. And I thought that it was actually very telling of Xander Schauffele's character as a golfer that he came out for that first round of the PGA and shot a 62 right after that disappointing finish at the Wells Fargo last weekend, where he kind of gets out to a slow start and shot even in round four, while Rory McIlroy, the eventual winner, shot 6 under on the day and uh, took over the one stroke lead that Xander had and eventually won the tournament by 5 shots. So big win for Xander Schauffele this week. Big major championship scoring record. And I thought something that was very interesting was that the rumblings of a live departure came back
Hmm.
after getting his first major win. Like now that he has that spot, he has a place at the PGA Championship for the rest of his career. He also has a spot in the other three majors for the next 5 years. So once golfers in the past, we've seen golfers from the PGA get their guarantee for major appearances in the future and then jump ship for live for the payday because they can show up to the other tournaments and still compete without being in the PGA. But Xander's father, Stefan Schauffele, in an interview with golf.com, he comes off the top rope and says Xander is going nowhere. He understands legacy. He understands what it means to be on the world ranking and to have world ranking points. Xander Schauffele is going to be a name in PGA for the foreseeable future, and I can only see more wins in his future.
Well, he took home $3.330 million dollars. So $3,330,000. That was the purse to the winner. And he started off really well. That first round, he was clean. He had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine birdies in that first round. And he absolutely killed it. He continued to prove that this is a moment where you can really see a golfer take off. And we talked about it with Phil. And that round two was a little bit not as good as the first round. He did have a bogey in there. But again, four birdies in that second round. He continued to kill it. And then in that third round, he really took off. He really had a good showing. Five birdies. You did see a double bogey on 15, which was a little bit, it allowed guys to get back into the race like Bryson DeChambeau. And I liked Bryson to win it from the beginning. I really thought Bryson was due. And you even saw at the end of the PGA, I don't know if you saw the viral video, the kid, he throws the golf ball to a kid and then a guy takes off and runs with it. You'd see that like a baseball game, right? But Bryson's like, come back, come back. No, that's for the kids. So that was a cool moment. Bryson definitely is on the cusp. He's been playing some great golf, and I expect him to break through. Victor Hovland, too, played very well. He finished third. So you have the Shambo finished -20. Xander Schauffele won at -21. Hovland was third at -18. He was hanging around. And we've talked about Victor in the past, Tucker, and I like his game a lot. I think he has not won a major championship yet, but he's certainly on the cusp, and give it time. I really do think so for Mr. Hovland.
Yeah, now that Xander isn't on the list of PGA golfers without a major, Victor Hovland pretty much shoots to the top of the list of like best PGA players without a major. Hovland is definitely up there with the best of them. He certainly like has I think he's got a major in his future down the line. Maybe not this season, or maybe this season. Honestly, like you never know, you know. But really consistent weekend out of Victor Hovland. And I find myself saying that a lot about this guy. He's just such a consistent golfer. He puts in 3 rounds of 66 this week to keep himself in the running. He had a great round 4, and if not for the bogey on 18, he birdied that hole the last 2 days before that. So if you flip that bogey and turn it into a birdie, he ties DeChambeau for second
Right.
place. So I mean that's a pretty crucial hole there. Um, but I went and looked at the FedEx standings for Victor Hovland because we see him near the top of the leaderboards a lot, and so I was kind of wondering how many points he had actually like accrued so far this season, without making the top of the leaderboard. He's currently 53rd in the FedEx Cup, which actually has him out of even the BMW.
Uh,
So I really think like
that's crazy.
I was interested to see that he wasn't in among the top 50 of FedEx scorers, and that kind of just tells me that Hovland needs to kind of use this tournament as a jumping off point for the rest of the season. Start to put in more top fives, maybe challenge for that win. If he gets a win under his belt, he's probably certainly going to the Tour Championship. But out of that 53rd spot, he's got some work to do. He's got to dig himself out of a hole there.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about that. Other guys that finished right at tied for fourth, 15 under Colin Morikawa, and then the German Thomas Dentry. So again, there's a lot of good things that we saw out of the PGA. You mentioned Rory before too, and I do want to mention this really quick. This marks the 10-year anniversary. It was the US Open back in 2014. 10 years since Rory's won a major championship, and we saw
Oh, was that his
recently,
last major?
yeah,
Mm,
2014. So it's been 10
yeah.
years now. And you got to think with Rory, we know he's one of the greatest golfers, still is. That hasn't left his game, but there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes too with Rory. You know, the divorce is going on, obviously everything with Liv, but he's said time and time again he's not going to leave Liv. He's going to stay with the PGA. So just quickly, Tucker, on Rory, what do you think is going through his head right now? It's a lot of moving parts, and he's just not playing good golf, and he really hasn't for the past decade.
Yeah, it's just got to be rough if you're Rory McIlroy. And I know Rory McIlroy is a Northern Irishman, but as an Irishman myself, um, I kind of feel for Rory a little bit. I've always had a soft spot for him a little bit, but yeah, it's just always tough to see him go out there and kind of like just like struggle week in and week out. And I mean, like a 12 under performance at the PGA isn't even that terrible, but I mean, Valhalla was playing like a dream for most of the field this week. So that didn't help. And then obviously you talk about all the stuff with the divorce and like anything flying around with Liv. It's like it's almost too much for someone to be thinking about when you're trying to play golf, you know? Like at some point I want to give Rory a little bit of credit for dealing with everything that he has, especially being like I think we talked about it on the last episode of On the Green too. Like he's been the poster child of the PGA in the war against Liv, but and he's been dealing with all of that too, and still just trying to put a good round of golf out there on the course. And time and again, we just see him fall short. So at this point, like I just kind of feel bad for him anymore.
Me too. Me too. And again, that's the beauty of golf. You see guys when they're much older still got it. So I think Rory does have a couple more championships, major championships left in his game. When we talk about Rory and he's dealing with so much and how does he able to stay composed, you got to mention Scottie Scheffler. And it broke the news of the golf world. It really broke the news of the sports world, waking up Friday morning, seeing that the world number one got arrested. And you hear that, Tucker, and you really start to think, first thought, DUI. First thought, really bad things, right? And that's not who Scotty is. Scotty's a really down-to-earth guy, good
Family
Christian guy.
man.
Absolutely. And
He's a
he's
father
the
now.
well, yeah, that too. And it's crazy because the whole thing happens. And for anyone who doesn't know, Scotty Scheffler, the Friday of the PGA Championship, he gets there, he's driving in, and his tee time was 9 o'clock, and he gets there at 5:30 in the morning. So first off, that tells you his dedication. And then if you want to hear his mental state, the guy gets arrested because they didn't believe he was Scotty Scheffler. There was a lot of things going on. They didn't know that they were trying to wave him through. He gets through the first round of security and then the guy stops him. And his name was Brian Gillis. And a quote here, he said he refused to comply and accelerated forward. And then he dragged him to the ground and he flashed a flashlight in his car before he did that. And he was like, whoa, 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 where are you going? Get back here. And that's where the confrontation started. Scheffler got out of the car and he faced some serious charges. He faced a felony and three misdemeanors. And it was second-degree assault of a police officer. That's the felony. Third-degree mischief, reckless driving, and disregarding signals from officers directing traffic. So first thought, you're thinking, this guy is not going to play his best golf. And he was stretching in jail, as he said, and it was 9:00, it was 8:55. He gets to the golf course 5 minutes before his tee time, and he went out there and shot a 66. He played like the world number one. And I got to ask you, Tucker, what was going through your mind when you heard all that?
Well, first thought was, of course, in the one weekend where Scottie Scheffler is finally not just completely dominating the field, he still manages to make all the headlines, even when he's not at the top of the leaderboard. It's absolutely ridiculous. Scottie Scheffler just refuses to not be the center of attention. Um, but this situation just was really weird to me. Just like all the confusion with the actual event itself, and then having all this stuff with an arraignment now that's been postponed until June 3rd. But like
They expect the
it,
charges to be dropped, but
yeah,
it
it
should be. I
seemed
mean, he
like
didn't. Right?
I definitely agreed with you though. It seemed like it should have affected his game, but he honestly, yeah, he played great in round two. He put together a nice round, and honestly, I feel like he probably should have gotten himself sent back to jail before the third round too, because he came out for round three and shot a 73. That kind of blew up his chances of keeping pace with the field for the rest of the tournament, or
Well, it's
for round four.
right, and it's interesting because you mentioned that 73 on Saturday, and his caddy Ted Scott, and he's Ted Scott's a great caddy. He's won about I think four Masters as a caddy, not with Scheffler, but he was Scheffler's caddy for the weekend. And on Saturday, similar to Fordham, actually, it was his daughter's graduation. I'm not sure it wasn't Fordham where she graduated, but that's something that he had to miss. So he missed Saturday, and Scheffler did not have his caddy and Ted Scott. So you got to think in the mental state of Scottie Scheffler, everything's going through his mind. A caddy is usually there to calm the nerves. And there's usually two types of caddies. You got the one that tells you the yardages, just standard caddy carrying the bag. They all carry the bag. But there's also another form of a caddy where they're more like your friend. And they kind of just, after you hit a shot, they say, oh, how was the baseball game this weekend? You watch it. And I think that's something that certainly it's tough because if you're dealing, it's similar to a coach, caddy. And if Scottie Scheffler didn't have his right hand man there, that could be a reason why Saturday did not perform in the way that it did. But again, it always reminds me of that Patrick Ewing 2021 Big East where, Patrick Ewing's the man at MSG and they don't even know who he is. They're stopping every game. It's like, come on, Scottie Scheffler just won the Masters, people. Like this is the guy that represents golf, and you don't know who he is. Like there's something not right there. And if you're Valhalla, you're definitely a little disappointed in what happened. You never want that. publicity in a negative light, especially with Scottie Scheffler. But
Well,
certainly,
I
certain,
mean, the whole circumstances
yeah,
of the situation are just kind of bad in general because, like, you're dealing with like the vendor who was struck and killed by a bus, I
right,
believe it
right,
was, and that was why the police were even there in the first place, like, kind of like with a different traffic pattern was because of that incident. So
good
now on
point.
top of the PGA dealing with this, they're also dealing with like their world number one getting arrested at that incident. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of like crazy PR like nightmare scenario swirling around. But that's one of the great things about Scotty Scheffler is that I don't think there's really ever a point where we're worried anymore that he will be affected on like a tournament to tournament basis. On day to day, maybe, like, and we saw that on Saturday,
Mhm.
but there's no doubt in my mind that next weekend at the Charles Schwab, it's going to be more Scotty Scheffler, like dead straight drives and beautiful approach play with some of the most electric putting we've seen in
Some
years.
crazy footwork too.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's crazy, and you really gotta put yourself in the mind of Scheffler. And he won the Masters while having a kid. His wife was in labor, and that's obviously a lot to go through. And he pursued. He didn't end up winning, but he ended up placing. So good for him. Someone who didn't make the cut, Tiger Woods. Unfortunately, there. What do you expect with Tiger Woods? He's at that point in his career where it's just nice to see him pick up a golf club and swing it. And if he does great, he does great. Obviously, the 2019 Masters was magical, but I'm not so sure Tiger's ever really going to recapture that again. But, it was tough. It was tough. There was a lot of good things from this tournament. The whole thing with Scheffler really just wrapped everything home. And it was a really crazy waking up, looking at your phone, and just seeing that. But as you said, in the Charles Schwab, I think he's going to bounce back. I think he's going to do well. And there was a lot of good things from this tournament, and a lot of good things to look forward to as the U.S. Open is coming up too. And obviously, a lot of people are looking to that. That's another major championship that a lot of people have their eyes on. So, in terms of everything, Tucker, what was your final takeaways, final thoughts, Scheffler, Xander, Tiger, any of this? And what do you expect moving forward as we get ready for the US Open, which is at Pinehurst, June 13th through the 16th?
Well, I think we already mentioned it was a huge weekend and a huge step forward for Xander Schauffele.
Mm,
Going forward, I think Scotty Scheffler can continue to be confident in himself, as we already mentioned as well. Um, for Bryson DeChambeau,
mhm.
honestly, I'd say just keep it rolling in
Yeah,
those events where there's PGA golfers present. I mean, this is the second major now where DeChambeau has been making a little noise. We had to talk about him during the Masters because he was up there in the leaderboard and he was making it interesting in the last couple days. And then he did it again. This man brought out the Texas wedge on 6 in round 4 at the PGA and sunk that. That was absolutely ridiculous.
mhm.
And he had the crowd into it. It was a great weekend for Bryson DeChambeau overall, and I think he's got to use this too. So big momentum for Xander, big momentum for DeChambeau, continued momentum for Scotty because as usual. And heading into the US Open, I think you'd be silly not to say it was going to be Scotty Scheffler probably again, to be honest, because he just looks so dominant. And if he comes in and he puts in like if he puts in two dominant rounds in round one and round two, the weekend's basically over.
Right, right. And DeChambeau put a lot of pressure on Schauffele down the stretch. He had some birdies, and Schauffele had to get up and down. He had to sink a 6-foot putt, which was also crazy, got the crowd right back into it. And
Oh, and
that
that last hole was ooh,
very
that
scary.
had me a
Very,
little nervous.
very scary. But that minus 21, 21 under, the lowest score ever in a PGA championship, in a major championship in golf history. So a lot of good things there. Tucker, this was amazing. I'm glad we got to do this. This is an extension of On the Green. Listen to On the Green if you ever have a chance to, wherever you get your podcast, WFUV Sports. We talk golf as much as we can, and we had to cover this because it was golf, but there was also some Scotty Scheffler in there, so we had to get that in there as well. Tucker has been amazing, and once again, this is an extension of On the Green. This was a WFUV featured report. I'm Dan Bartels, that's Tucker Austin, and we'll see you again soon.